Going inside the issues of our community, this is Local 12 Newsmakers.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. Recognition of the problems posed by fragmentation of local government are nothing new. 50 years ago, this is how it was presented.
The house on the right is in Cincinnati. The house on the left is legally in one of the communities that exist within or adjacent to Cincinnati's city limits. The house on the left is protected by the police of its own community. The family on the right, just 15 feet away, is protected by Cincinnati police. In case of fire, the family on the left calls the fire department from their own municipality. But the people right next door call the Cincinnati Fire Department. The children on the left attend their own school some distance away. But their friends, the children on the right, attend a nearby Cincinnati school. For these two families living side by side, police and fire protection, school facilities, and many other services must be duplicated. In Hamilton County, this problem of duplication of services reaches staggering proportions. In and around the city of Cincinnati are 32 independent communities. Day in, day out, year in, year out, these communities must duplicate many expensive services. For taxpayers, this represents a tremendous waste.
If that 50-year-old film was being produced today, the graphic technology would be a bit different. I love those thumbtacks. The perspective would not be so Cincinnati-centric, and the status of the townships, not just the villages and cities, would have to be taken into account. But the statement of the issue, fragmentation leads to duplication, inefficiency, and waste, is still relevant. I am joined this morning by two people who are part of a new effort dubbed Cooperation and Efficiency Project that is attempting to address the issues around cross-jurisdictional cooperation and possible service consolidations. Chris Bortz, a Charterite, is a member of the Cincinnati City Council, and Pat DeWine, a Republican, is a member of the Hamilton County Commission. For both of you, welcome back to Newsmakers. I mean, could you just take that and slap it into some of the discussions?
I think for the most part, I really like the cartoon figures too. Those are compelling.
That's right, they are. They really, you know, that's the latest animation in 1958. I love that film. Anyway, let's start out. First off, who's involved in this effort, Chris? What's the scope of? I know it's not just the two of you. What's the scope of the effort here?
Well, I think as Pat is defined pretty well already. The idea here is to make sure that you're including three basic components of the community: government, the private sector, and nonprofits. So we're trying to draw from those different groups to help us populate a team that will look at a voluntary program of service consolidation. And through that, we've asked Dick Finan, former state senator who's well respected in the broader community, to bring some of that government perspective, along with Pat and myself, and John Taylor from PNC Bank, president of PNC Bank, coming in as the CBC president. He's a Cincinnati Business Committee, and others like Citizens for Civic Renewal, a great nonprofit that's been focused on this issue for some time, and also OKI, the Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana Regional Council of Governments. All of these groups have to come together to really bring the expertise and the knowledge base that we need to really make sure this is successful.
Pat, as that little clip indicates, this is a topic that's been around for a long time. Is there any reason to believe that beginning of the 21st century, 2006, we're in a different situation, that the dynamics of this conversation, that something different can come out of this?
I think there is, and you know, just to back up a second for the clip. I mean, this isn't something that's about metro government or taking away political autonomy from jurisdictions. What it's really about is that there are some things that we can do better by doing cooperatively. The city and the county being the two largest governments in the area, but also we're also going to invite to be part of this process, if they want to, some of the townships and local municipalities. And they don't have to participate. This is a purely voluntary thing, but if local elected officials see some benefit to taxpayers in those communities, then they're welcome too to be part of this process. And yeah, I do think there are reasons that the time is opportune to do this.
You know, the one of the things I do want to, this is the historian in me, this was a follow-up report from the 1948 Metropolitan Master Plan. It too did not see metro government as where it was going. It was trying to find cooperation and collaboration across existing lines. What would be some of the concrete areas that you think you might find some collaborative work?
Right. What we're trying to do is put together a process that allows local jurisdictions to identify those things. So we've been real careful not to go in saying we want to merge this service or that service. But I think there's a wide variety of things out there, and some of it's already being done that could be provided more efficiently over a larger geographic area. But we've been careful to. Chris Bortz and Pat DeWine aren't going to identify this service. We're going to allow the local jurisdictions to do
Chris, one of the areas that there already is cooperation and collaboration, and I'm going to push a little bit here, is on Metropolitan Sewer District, MSD. That's already a joint. Is that a model? Is that something that could be improved? How do you see that? Because there's, and I'm always get confused, is it the county owns it and the city operates it?
That's right.
Okay. Is that a possible model for some other areas?
Well, I think that's a model to look at. That doesn't mean that MSD is perfectly organized or structured to take advantage of those efficiencies. And when you're talking about something with as many physical resources as something like the Metropolitan Sewer District, it's a slightly different animal than more pure service delivery. So certainly Waterworks, which is a more regional delivery system, and
owned and operated by the city, though, but operating regionally.
But operating regionally. Now that's a good model that can also be copied in some instances. South, SORTA and Metro, which is a regional service delivery program that's almost entirely run by the city. Those are good examples of.
But people would say on that one, even though it's technically regional, the assets are owned by the city, and if you live outside the city, service really falls off.
Well, that's
as
the
somebody
challenge.
who lives just beyond the city limits. When I moved out, I realized, man, all of a sudden I have a big problem using the bus, which I used to use all the time.
Well, Dan, I think that's the challenge, is how do you ensure this isn't just about consolidating services to say that we've done it. This is about ensuring that we're creating better quality service and picking up some efficiencies, some cost savings in the process. It's really about service delivery and making sure that anyone that wants to participate in this program can be assured that they're going to get the highest level of service, as if they were paying for it or rolling or conducting it themselves.
Pat, let me ask a question about, again, a specific service, and that's waste collection. You know, in the last, people who have been following the news, and I, as best I can, you know, there's this decision that Rumpke, which has this huge waste operation out in Coleraine Township, Rumpke Mountain, and they want to expand. This is a regional need. It's certainly a need in the county, and yet Coleraine Township has decided they're going to block that. That's a regional concern, waste collection, that's controlled by a local, it doesn't seem to fit. What do we do about stuff like that?
Well, I don't know that really that's what this is about, frankly. I mean, I think in that situation, I do think the people that live in that community are entitled to make decisions about what kind of landfill they have in that community. And there's nothing about this that would take away any of that autonomy. What this is really about is looking at things that can better be provided across jurisdictional lines to save taxpayers money by doing so and provide better service.
Okay, I've asked a few specific questions, and you've been reluctant, either of you have been reluctant to name anything. Just give me a for instance, though. Somebody give me a for instance of some service across lines and how it would save money.
Well, I'll give you an example of what other places have done. Everyone talks about metro government, regional government, but there's actually a lot of models out there.
Right.
One of the most successful in the country is Charlotte-Mecklenburg County, where I went to visit a couple years ago and talked to some leaders there. What they've done is they've actually had 3 initiatives on the ballot to create metro government. They've all failed. So instead, they have merge services between the city and county to the extent that 80% of the services in that county are provided across the county, city and county, and they have merged everything from planning functions to building department functions to garbage collection. Right now they're talking about merging the city and county fleet so they can achieve more efficiencies as far as purchasing and also maintenance of automobiles.
But the governments themselves,
the government, they have their own county commission, they have their own city council, separate elections, and they have a number of independent subdivisions within that.
We have a map I want to put up now that indicates just in our area, and it doesn't include Mecklenburg County, but just in our area, there are a lot of different experiments, and people sometimes, I think, when they think of Indianapolis, think that that's metro government or Louisville or Columbus. But those are the models, actually, when you get on the ground, they're all very different. And even in northern Kentucky, there's a lot of this discussion is going on now. So what you're saying, the two of you are saying, is this doesn't have to raise that terrible political red flag of metro government. There's lots of things we could talk about.
That's exactly right. Certainly this community has a long tradition of identifying itself at the neighborhood level. Cincinnati itself is divided into 52 neighborhoods, and you live in one neighborhood and you define yourself by that neighborhood. Now, you don't have necessarily political representation there, but you do have community councils, and those carry a great deal of weight in the community. Beyond that, you've got, 49 different planning jurisdictions in the county. This is an area that has been defined by its local representation, its local self-determination, and to go to some higher level of political leadership.
But aren't we saying
probably wouldn't work here?
But aren't we saying, though, that all of that fascination with the locality, the neighborhood, the village, and the town, and our loyalties to that, we have reached a point where there are a lot of positive things about that, but there's some real inefficiency, negative things about that. And in light of that map we just had up with our competitors, if we don't do something about this, we're going to be left behind. There is some urgency here, right?
I think that's what we're doing. I think that's right. People in Hamilton County pay, when you combine all the taxes we pay, we have the second highest tax burden of the 88 counties in the state of Ohio. There's a survey that came out that said the city of Cincinnati was, of all the urban areas in the country, only one had a higher cost of doing business. And part of that, I think, is a result of this fragmentation and layers of taxes and duplication.
And the reality is, at some point, we're going to have to step on somebody's toes here, right? We can't have everything nice.
Well, hang on, Dan. I think you're right to a degree that changing the status quo is always difficult and requires pressure. And change isn't always comfortable for people. But what we're talking about here is really the first steps in creating relationships between jurisdictions, creating the trust that's necessary between jurisdictions to begin to have that conversation. How can we share services? We can still retain our political independence, but we can start sharing where it really counts. In that basic service delivery, where we can increase the quality of service without increasing taxes, and start looking at better ways to reinvest in the capital, our real infrastructure needs, which are growing in an older area. So that's the challenge, but that's also the opportunity. And every time we create a new relationship with the city and the county, or with some other municipality or township, it has a lasting impact on the way we interact as a community and define our agenda together.
Pat, one of the things that's happened over at City Hall is that the new city manager comes from two areas, Lexington and Louisville, that have done versions of this sort of thing. And I don't want to, they're not just metro government. It's much more complicated than that once you get on the ground and you really look, especially in Louisville, look at what's happening. Is that helpful? And is there the fact that Milton Dohoney is here and has some of that experience, and is there some of that same sort of talk experience that we could get inside of county government?
I think it certainly is helpful. I mean, there's we're not talking about doing what Louisville or Lexington has done, but I think there are some learnings there from going through the efforts to consolidate departments, consolidate services that you can bring to this task.
Well, thank you very much. This is going to be interesting, and we're going to follow this because obviously I care a lot about this topic. I mean, this is one that I just care about. Okay, thank you for being here this morning. If you are interested in playing with ideas that challenge the status quo, youth is a value, and in the spirit of continuing to imagine alternative regional futures, and without in any way suggesting that Bortz and DeWine may already show signs of aging. After the break, I'll be joined by two members of the mayor's new Young Professionals Kitchen Cabinet. Welcome back. During his State of the City talk last April, Mayor Mark Mallory announced that he intended to form a young professionals kitchen cabinet. His goal was to establish a group of people who could help him, and I quote, gain perspective on how to attract and retain young professionals in the Cincinnati area and to develop stronger ties between the city and the young professional community. The kitchen cabinet, which met for the first time on October the 17th, is made up of 12 people who represent a variety of backgrounds, some lifelong residents, some newcomers, one who lives in northern Kentucky, and a variety of settings in the community, including private business, public agencies, nonprofit agencies, the faith community, and the universities. 3 members of the cabinet form the executive committee. The other 9, each one chairs a committee that involves additional people from the community at large. I am joined this morning by 2 members of the Cabinet's Executive Committee. Candace Klein is the president of the Cabinet. She is a resident of Covington and works as in economic development for Property Advisors. Coby Williams is the vice president of the Cabinet. He's a lifelong resident of Cincinnati and information technology contractor for Sarcom. Welcome to Newsmakers, and congratulations on your selection to the kitchen cabinet and the and leadership roles. So
thank you very much.
Very much. What is it, Candace, that got you interested in even? I mean, it's one thing for the mayor to announce this. Mm-hmm. Why did you apply? What was it that you were hoping to accomplish?
Well, I've said this to members of the cabinet recently, but you know, it's interesting. As a young professional in Cincinnati, many of the groups that we can currently get involved in as a young person, the road has already been built for us, and we have to find detours in order to get what we want for the city. The mayor has given us a real opportunity through this kitchen cabinet to build the road ourselves. So there's been no path created for us, and there was some real beauty in that for me, and charting some territories that maybe our predecessors, our bosses, our parents didn't want to go over again. We now get to go over them as if they're brand new.
Okay, so the fact that this was a new initiative was
New.
really attractive
Yes,
to you.
Very much, and that it has the endorsement of the mayor's office, that we have a direct line to the city government of Cincinnati was very important to me.
And Coby, how about you? What is it that what attracted you to put yourself forward on this one?
I feel the same way. This is really an unprecedented opportunity, not only for the city of Cincinnati, but for the region itself. This was an opportunity for young professionals to actually be involved in the entire process. Oftentimes, we are pretty much only involved in the idea generation of projects. With this, we're involved in the actual implementation of it, idea generation, and actually some legislative issues as well we were able to participate in.
I quoted the mayor when he gave that presentation, his State of the City address back in April, and he was saying that one of his goals was to get a group of people who could help him figure out how to attract young professionals to Cincinnati and have them stay. Now, we hear lots of things about, Cincinnati could be dull, it could be a hard place to find a date. I mean, there's all kinds of surveys that come out.
Right.
From your perspective, Coby, how would you describe Cincinnati in relationship to young professionals?
I think there's a lot of opportunity here. As Candace said, there's a lot of the road that hasn't been created as of yet, and that there's plenty of opportunity. We have a long way to go as far as certain aspects, but this is a perfect way for us to get involved.
Or do you hear friends of yours, though, saying either they're not going to take a job here or they're looking for jobs elsewhere?
Honestly, I do, but this is a way to really engage young professionals in the city itself. I believe if a relationship is established with the communities, you will keep people here. We have the jobs here, obviously. We have a lot of Fortune 500 companies headquartered here, so that's not the issue. And we do have entertainment districts that are vibrant. It's just a matter of establishing the relationships with the professionals and the community itself.
Candace, along those same lines, I know you're just in the organizational stage, and you just had your first retreat this past weekend.
That's correct.
But could you imagine, and I know the group hasn't had a chance to focus on any one concrete thing, but could you imagine a concrete thing that might be pushed forward that would be attractive to young professionals, something we can get our hands on here?
I think that, yes, there's been a lot of discussion so far in our group around several issues, some that have been discussed already by the leaders in the region and some that have not. Specifically, there's been a lot of talk around the arts districts and how to create stronger arts districts and really play up the arts strengths that we have in the region. Additionally, we've had our Health and Environment Committee talking about green cities and how to bolster our park systems and how to create green transportation, which brings me to a third issue, transportation. That's something that we haven't come up with any specific solution yet, but the conversations have begun. And so I think that you'll see this group really wanting to tackle some of the tougher issues.
What I hear there is there's the recreation side, but even there was a reference sort of to outdoor recreation.
Yes.
And then I hear a real connection, concern for, and fascination by how that intersects with environmental questions.
Yes.
Green.
Right.
And lots of people are saying the whole future of politics is about the green revolution, and that's where everything's going to go. Is that what your generation maybe brings to this discussion?
I think, yes, I think that the generation brings that. I also think that we are lucky the mayor has chosen some true experts in the green industry to help us out with that. I think that we realized in order to be good citizens of Cincinnati, in order to make this a place where our grandchildren and great-grandchildren can have the same experiences and better experiences than we've had, we've got to do so and be cognizant of our community, of our environment.
Coby, Candace was talking about the importance of the arts, and lots of generations talk about the importance of the arts. But for young professionals, what is it in the arts world that is attractive and that you can build on? Because it may not be the same for every generation. We all know, for example, the symphony is having a real struggle. Anybody who goes to the symphony can look around and say, this is an aging audience, and So what is it in the arts world that you think young professionals would find particularly fascinating and need to be built up?
I think the arts in itself is representation of innovation, creativity, and that's something that a young professional in itself can bring to the table. Different ways of approaching different topics, the arts in itself. We do bring a fresh energy to each of the committees. And in the arts, just a different way of participating in them. Like I said, this is an opportunity for us to actually engage the community itself.
Now, I know arts is only one of and there's 9 committees here, as I see, and you two, because you're on the executive committee, I take it you're not on one of the, but is there a committee that you think we ought to point out, that you're really hopeful about?
Well, I will say we're hopeful about all 9.
Oh, of course.
I think something that's interesting that we're finding from our retreat this weekend is that there's a lot of overlap, and very few committees see themselves as just one committee. For instance, there's a strong overlap between education and parents and young families. There's a strong overlap between civic engagement and economic development. And so I think that each committee will have significant strengths. There will probably be a smaller number of projects that comes out of this cabinet in this first year that all of the committees are somehow involved with.
Yeah, there's no sense in a new organization trying to do too much at one time. It's better to do a couple of focused things and make them work.
Exactly.
Right.
How about you, Coby?
One committee that I'm particularly excited about is the Cultural Diversity Committee, and once again that can tie into several of the different committees. I expect a lot of cross collaborations with arts and entertainment in particular. This community does have a lot of history to it, a lot of culture to it, and that committee in particular will be kind of responsible for getting awareness and education out with a lot of the ethnicities, lifestyles. Culture can encompass a lot of different things.
Right. We got less than a minute left. Now, I know there are 12 of you on the kitchen cabinet itself, but as I understand, there's an opportunity for people to become involved, other people to become involved in this process. Am I right?
Absolutely, and actually the cabinet will consist of about 100 young professionals altogether. There are 12 committee chairs and executive people on the steering committee, but there will be 100 young professionals altogether.
Knowing time here, how would people get in contact? What's the best way to find out about this if they want to get involved?
Visit the mayor's website.
The mayor's website. So you just go, if you just Google Cincinnati, City of Cincinnati, over on the right-hand side is the mayor's side. So thank you very much. You're going to be back because this is very important to the future of our city, and that's what ultimately this show is about. So thank you for being here, and thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Next week, I'll be joined by Cincinnati Mayor Mark Mallory on the first anniversary of his swearing into office. Have a good week.